This is my intro music. Welcome to the video. I hope you like it lots, so don't forget to subscribe and click the thumbs up button. Now let's react.
Hey, hi, hello there, and welcome to another episode of An Anthropologist Looks at LoLCow Bus, Dark Anthropology Edition. Wow. I'm thinking I'm going to break this down into roughly 3 episodes because, follow me, I want to do one that is the generic elements of LoLCow Bus, comparing it to, follow me, Jerry Springer and WWE. And then I want to do another episode that compares all of the characters of the LoLCow Universe, LCU, to Jerry Springer and WWE. Are we noticing a trend? And then I want to do a third video, which will be bringing in all three. We'll be bringing in our dark anthropology principles, our typical 8 dark anthropology principles, and looking at the LCU, specifically focused on LoLCow Bus, and comparing that along with the comparisons of Jerry Springer and WWE, and looking at it through us and yours, yes, anyway, dark anthropological lens, yes? And since I don't want these to be 19 million hours long, the goal this year is to have slightly shorter videos. I'm going to break these up into what I'm hoping will be 3 relatively short videos. Short for me. If you're new to this channel, that means not an hour and 20 minutes. So, I have notes. Those don't always keep me on track, but we have notes. So if you see me looking over yon, it's because I'm looking at my notes. I also have tabs that I'm going to be hopefully switching through, just mainly to keep things interesting. So here we go. We're not going to be watching any videos exactly, though I will be reacting to a video later that is related to this topic, but will be a traditional reaction. So thank you to everybody who's been supporting the channel. Thank you to my subscribers. Thank you to my members. You guys rock. Thank you to everybody who's going to hit the thumbs up button. I hope you guys are enjoying this. I did go over a lot of this in a live, so if you were there for that some of this might actually sound a little familiar to you guys. Some of you did ask some really good questions during that live, so I appreciate that. And my goal is to keep the editing to this down to a minimum, so if there's some weird awkward points that are still left in, that's because I'm lazy. Anyway, so let me yank my notes up. All right, for those of you who don't know, I don't know who you are, but starting at the beginning of the year, Amberlynn Reid joined the LCU, which I believe stands for the LoLCow Cinematic Universe. Cinematic Universe. Playing off of Marvel. It's not, well, okay, that just depends on how you... I was going to say it's not as much fun as Marvel. It really just depends on how you feel about Marvel movies, I guess. But, yeah, anyway, it's not as much fun for me as Marvel movies. So let's put it that way. If you were around for the last half of 2025, Amber got demonetized. According to the new enforced, they're not new, the newly enforced, let me put it that way, rules by YouTube, where they have decided to clarify and enforce their self-harm rules that have always been part of the TOS, but they've never quite enforced them. So suddenly, YouTube has decided that now is the time to enforce those rules, right before the end of the year. So they demonetized all of the girls, actually, by the end of the year. They've managed to demonetize all of the girls, as far as I'm aware. And Amber got hit first. So Amber was first cow down. I mean that as a lol cow. So Amber, now for a while, for those of you who don't know, for a while, Keemstar, who is the proud owner, or 1/3 of, as I was informed by someone in the know, you know who you are. I have insiders. Anyway, Yeah, that makes me feel special to be able to say that. Anyway, Keemstar, who is at least the powerhouse behind the LCU, had been trying to get Amber onto the LCU for about a year, give or take. I think it was longer than that, but was like seriously trying for roughly a year. And then Amber got demonetized, so her channel is, well, it's gone now, but I mean, it's still there, but there's nothing on the channel. She got demonetized. She didn't get banned. So demonetization just means that she can't make any money off of any of her videos, and which is a big blow for Amber because that's literally her job. That was her income. So that was a big blow. So I'm assuming after she got demonetized, Keemstar came in and was like, here's an offer you can't refuse. Money. And Amber was like, yeah, okay. So Amber then decided to go join the LCU. I believe another character who we will discuss named Yo Mama was involved with whispering sweet nothings into Amber's ear. Joy of joys. Just joy of joys over here. Now, for those that don't know, the LCU has a lot of questionable characters in it, a lot of people with not great backgrounds. That seems to be LCU's shtick, is they go and find problematic creators, problematic internet personalities, and they try to include them in the LCU. When I looked last, there were like 8 different LCU channels, each channel representing a show. And they all have a varying number of viewers. There seem to only be like 3 channels that were above 20K. One being, I believe it's LoLCow Live, which I think is their original show. I think that's the show Keem himself is on. Anyway, we'll do a deeper dive into LCU later, because it's important, but not to what we're talking about today. We'll touch it, but we'll touch the poo. We'll touch the LC poo. Ooh. But today we're just talking about LCU Bus, LoLCow Bus. And for those of you wondering, it used to be called LoLCow Short Bus, but the short was taken off. If you don't know why short bus was offensive, good for you. I'm not going to go into it. So, there we are. So, they currently have... So the LCU is like a network. There we go, stumbling over my own words. So, the LCU is like a network, effectively, like a TV network, that has a variety of shows on it. And LoLCow Bus is one of. Now, the story as I understand it, could be different, might change, is that LoLCow Bus actually was canceled. It was a canceled show. You'll see why I keep putting things in quotes. And the original 2 hosts were this gentleman here, who is named Scooter. That's his screen name. And this young woman over here. Here we go. This young woman over here. Young, I say. This young woman over here, whose name is Sweet Tea. And Sweet Tea and Scooter were the original 2 hosts of Short Bus, LoLCow Bus. We're just going to call it Bus for short, by the way. And something happened between Scooter and Keem, and apparently, I don't know, this is just the lore, and Scooter was kicked off the show, and the show was canceled. And then Amber came along and finally said, yes, I'll be on the LCU. And according to Amber, if you listen on the first episode, which would be this episode, we're not watching it. I've already watched it enough times. I don't want to watch it again. According to Amber, she specifically requested to be on Bus with Scooter and Sweet Tea. So because Amber decided to go on to the LCU, she got to request which show to be on. And instead of being on the show with Yo Mama, which even Yo Mama on his show was like, wow, I really wish she had come onto my show first. Instead of going onto the show with Yo Mama, who is her BFF, something something. She decided to go on this show with Sweet Tea and Scooter, who don't know her from Adam. We can speculate as to why. We can even speculate as to if Amber really did have the option, like if she even really chose to go on this show, or if she was told she was going to be on this show. And this is a great way to segue into why the LCU is like a mismatch of Jerry Springer and the WWE/WWF. We will be referring to it as the WWE because it hasn't been the WWF since like the 90s. So for those of you who are old, it's the WWE. Anyway. First things we're going to talk about is Roland Barthes, because we do academics over here. This is our dear Roland Barthes. Now, something you need to know. He is not an anthropologist. No. He he actually did literary reviews. But he wrote a very important paper back in 1957 called The World of Wrestling, 1957. And in that paper, he identified some very important things that we will be discussing throughout our discussion. Now, obviously, it was focused on wrestling, but Barthes, I do believe I'm pronouncing that correct. He is French. I am not. I am probably butchering his name. I apologize. But Barthes, it's French. You probably don't pronounce like all of the vowels. His core insights were that wrestling is not about sports. It's about the presentation of morality. Because you have in wrestling, we're going to use modern terms today, you have faces and you have heels. And the faces are the moral, well, they're both moral archetypes, right? So you have the faces who are the good guys and you have heels who are the bad guys. And those are our two moral archetypes. There's not typically, well, sometimes there's anti-heroes in there. I can think of a couple. But back in the day, back in the 50s, it was basically you were good or you were bad. And typically you were also very patriotic if you were one or the other. You were either one of the good guys or you were one of the bad guys, right? But if, depending on where you fell on that moral spectrum, depended on, dictated what values you presented. So you weren't just wrestling, and it's still today. The wrestling characters, and I'm going to use characters, the wrestling characters don't just wrestle. They have characters. There are, I mean, pretty much everybody has some clue of a wrestler, right? Because it's so part of, especially if you're from the Midwest, I'm sorry. If you don't have a wrestler in mind when I say wrestling and you're from the Midwest, you lived under a rock. So, not the rock, a rock. See? Huh? But these things, the concept of the the face and the heel are important to wrestling because wrestling becomes part of the moral play. And people go to wrestling not just to watch two grown men throw each other around a ring. They go to literally watch good versus evil and watch, hopefully, good conquer evil, or should evil win, good is allowed to have a comeback and defeat evil, right? Or evil will eventually be turned into good. It's a soap opera, all right? So now we have we have Barthes. Cracking myself up. So we have Barthes comments on the morality and the moral play of wrestling, the ritualistic drama, if you will, because we have to make this anthropology, ergo it must be ritual, of anthropology. And I will mention him a little bit more as we go in and out of topics. So, going back to the concept of the face and the heel, and the good versus evil, and then values and morals within wrestling, how it is a moral play, we need to come up to the WWE. We're just going to call it that, even when we're talking about it in the past. We have to go with a concept called Kayfabe, and I tried to figure out where this damn word came from. And Kayfabe itself is its own mystery. And it's okay. We're just going to let Kayfabe be a mystery. Apparently, Kayfabe is a word that has been in the wrestling industry for a very long time. It might be part of other industries as well. But Kayfabe is a word that has an origin story somewhere that has been lost to the annuals of time. And it exists, okay? And Kayfabe is a cultural agreement between the audience and, in this case, wrestlers, the whole industry of wrestling, right? I'm gonna shatter some dreams here for some people. I think maybe, probably not. But the industry of pro wrestling, for those of you who don't know, isn't real. The industry is real, but the stories and the characters and the stuff that happens within the drama, that's not real. A good chunk of the physical violence, if one will, isn't real either. I'm not going to say that when you see, the Undertaker pick up, I don't know, random wrestler and pile drive him into the ring, that is actually happening, but that has been rehearsed and it is being performed in a way that the person being pile driven, or I forget what he called that move actually. I think it was called the tombstone. Anyway, they all have fancy names. But when that move was being done, it had been rehearsed and it was being done in a way to prevent serious damage to the person who it was being inflicted upon, right? If you've ever watched wrestling, you'll notice when they're throwing each other around the ring, there's a lot of like stomping and slapping and a lot of this shit happening. Not this. This is a thing. But a lot of that shit, their hand cues and their sound cues and things between the two wrestlers so that they can communicate with each other if they're actually really hurt or if they're ready for the next move or they're getting ready to do whatever the next step of the choreographed wrestling is happening, right? So they're communicating non-verbally with each other using fairly obvious body language, but they're doing it so that it doesn't interrupt the flow, right? I know what I'm seeing. You probably know what you're seeing. Everybody probably knows what's going on with the stomping and the hand slapping, and there's some other things that they do. It has nothing to do with the actual wrestling. That's why it looks so weird. But it's communication between the two people in the ring so that they're not actually hurting each other, right? And it's nonverbal and it's loud so that it still feels like they're wrestling with each other. Okay? So that's Kayfabe. All right, that's the cultural agreement. I know what I'm watching is choreographed. I know it's fake. I know it's a drama. I know it's a storyline. I know these two people don't actually hate each other. I know that the relationships between the actual wrestlers, like the people playing those characters, I know a lot of those relationships are very strong. A lot of those people they consider each other family. I know some of those people have like advanced degrees. Some of these people are highly educated. It's fascinating, the reality behind the wrestlers, right? So that's the thing. I know the reality of this industry, of these wrestlers. Well, not anymore. I don't really follow it that closely anymore, but I used to know these things. But, when Hulk Hogan, RIP, stepped out into the ring, he was Hulk Hogan, right? He wasn't whoever he is in his real life. Same thing with The Rock. When The Rock used to wrestle, he was The Rock. He wasn't Dwayne Johnson, right? Who's some of the other wrestlers that are like kind of sort of broke away? Who is this? John Cena. John Cena. Well, he wrestles as John Cena, but God, I remember when he debuted. Anyway, it's like I say, Christ, I'm old. Anyhow, that's Kayfabe. Remember that this is again, ritualized morality play that we are watching with the wrestling. And I'm going on a little too long about this. But in this ritualized play, especially back in the early years of the play, there were clear lines between good and bad, and we in the industry called those faces and heels. As an example, a lot of you may remember because you are also old. This is the Iron Sheik and his man nipples, and this is the Iron Sheik and Hulk Hogan wrestling. Now, back when the Iron Sheik and Hulk Hogan were wrestling, we, the United States, were having cultural differences with the country that the Iron Sheik was supposed to be representing. Yes, it was tactless. Yes, it was tasteless. Let's not pretend like the WWE is the fucking UN, because it's not. And that's one of the reasons why people are drawn to it. And this is another reason why it's a morality play. These two men have taken on these characters. Hulk Hogan was the American hero, right? He at the time embodied America in wrestling. Don't come for me. And the Iron Sheik was the bad guy. I mean, look at him. He's got that thing on his head. We don't do that here in America, right? So anyway, this is actually the Iron Sheik and Hulk Hogan. They're wrestling. Some of you will actually even know what match this is. I don't. This was actually before my time. But as you can see, Hulk Hogan wins. He's got the belt. What has happened here is not Hulk Hogan and the Iron Sheik have wrestled. God damn it. And Hulk Hogan has won. What has happened here is America has won. This is America's belt, right? And that's what wrestling presents to us, okay? Is it slumming? Is it intellectual slumming? Is it white trash? You can call it whatever you want. But this is why wrestling endures, okay? It seems ridiculous, sure. But this is what people go here to see. Why, he's got him in that suplex thing, doesn't he? I don't remember. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know everything about wrestling, because I don't. But I know what I know, and I liked it. But that's Kayfabe. That's the agreement between the audience, I am the audience, and the industry of WWE. We know it's fake. We're going to pretend like it's real. And because we're doing that, it allows that suspension of belief, which allows the storylines to go forward, right? It allows us to sit back and enjoy grown adults oiling themselves up, dressing in ridiculous costumes, and tossing each other around a ring. And there you have it. And that's the ritual. That's the ritual. That's the morality of the ritual. Even today, in our enlightened era of the WWE, I'm not going to pretend like that's true. Even today, the characters that are in the WWE, now, don't get me wrong, I am not 100%, I don't even know who most of the characters who wrestle today are. But I would guarantee you, if I went in and looked at them, I know there's faces, I know there's heels, there's probably people that are anti-heroes, and there's probably the exact same styles, same types of dramas that are playing out. There's people who are representing good. There are people that are representing evil. With the introduction of the anti-hero, there's people that are waffling back and forth. And I will bet you that every heel has been a hero and every hero has been a heel. Right? So there's that. Now, wrestling is interesting as a form of entertainment for a number of reasons, besides the soft scripting of it, right? There's a point where the script only goes so far. Remember, I told you that they get into the ring and there's a lot of nonverbal communication between the two wrestlers. Shit can go wrong, right? Things can happen that can go wrong. But one of the major differences between wrestling and most other forms of entertainment is audience participation. And wrestling includes audience participation almost all of the time, because wrestling is usually recorded in front of a live audience. Usually recorded in front of a live audience. These may or may not be paper cutouts. But, wait, we're coming back to that. That's Stone Cold Steve Austin. Because I love JR, that's why. All right, so as a participatory culture, the audience, we'll get through this, I promise. The audience is encouraged to chant. The audience is encouraged to produce signs. The audience is encouraged to boo sometimes the audience is encouraged to, not anymore, thankfully, but at other times the audience was once encouraged to reach in and help. This was way back in the day. And I know this is true because my grandfather told me this story. My grandmother also enjoyed wrestling. And my grandfather had to quit taking my grandmother to wrestling matches because I guess this is according to my grandfather. My grandmother, not realizing that these things are not real, the guy she wanted to win was losing, so my grandmother reached in and grabbed the guy who was beating the guy she wanted to win up. This is wrestling, not boxing, wrestling. And I guess my grandfather said that she was going to try to hit the dude with a chair, so they were asked to leave. I come from a long line of crazy women. Anyway, so once upon a time, you had the ability to get real close to the ring. I'm assuming because of women like my grandmother, we're not allowed to do that anymore. This is a picture of two of the announcers. This is JR. And you can see how close the audience is to the announcers, but you can also see that this is like a buffer that is also like it's reinforced, but I want to say squishy, so that you can't hurt yourself, right? And those are the prime seats. Those are the seats you pay money for. Anyway, my point being, this ask of the industry, of the audience to participate. This is an important add to the viewership. We don't just sit at home and watch and do nothing. There is the opportunity for you to go and actually participate. You can boo the bad guy and your voice is heard. You can cheer the good guy. Your voice is heard. And when the wrestlers get into the ring, they typically have a mic with them. They will try to hype the audience up. If they're the bad guy, they get into the ring and they say a bunch of crap and you're supposed to be like, boo. And if they're the good guys, they get into the ring and they say a bunch of good stuff and you're like, yeah. Sometimes Vince McMahon gets in the ring and everybody hates Vince McMahon because it's Vince McMahon. And we will talk about that. And then you also have these guys who will they narrate the wrestling match for the audience at home, but you can hear them here as well. So that brings the audience into the collective storytelling. So yes, there is a drama that's going on as part of the soft scripting, but the audience now participates in that storyline as well because we're there. Granted, we're just, shouting and chanting and holding up our signs, but that's more participation than sitting home and watching your telenova, right? Nothing against telenovas. But that makes us ritual participants in the act of the moral play, right? Which brings us to Jerry Springer, R.I.P. Jerry Springer. Don't get me wrong. Jerry Springer was not the first person to create a show that brought on people who confess their deepest secrets to a live audience. Well, maybe, I don't know. But we as humans have a fascination with listening to people confess their deep, dark secrets and then judging them about it. This has happened since we were humans. Like, we probably pre-humans even did this. Why? Literally because we are human. Now, the Jerry Springer show and the shows that followed it, and I think that were around roughly at the same time, I never watched Jerry Springer. I'm sorry. Well, I mean, obviously I watched it at least once or twice because I know I didn't like it. And I did not ever watch any of the other shows like it. Shows like Jerry Springer are actually the main reason I don't watch daytime TV at all because I don't like this kind of a thing. But the reason I'm telling you that is I have no personal experience with this, unlike with wrestling. So I don't have a whole lot to go into deep detail this with. But the Jerry Springer show is an example of ritualized moral spectacle. We're in anthropology, everything's ritual. All right. So this is the public confessional, right? We are bringing people up to the audience. They're there to tell us about whatever the hell they're telling us about that day. I don't know. And while they're telling us that, there is a live audience, not just us. The live audience is there. Again, this is another important detail. The live audience is there to judge them in real time. Right? And this is couched as the maintenance of the moral boundaries of society, right? With Jerry Springer there as like the mediator, right? Kind of. I know we're going deep. That's what we do on this channel. For the person who's going to be like, it's not that deep. This is what we do here. Go get your popcorn, right? So this aligns with Sherry Ortner, who we talk about a lot when I do my Dark Anthropology stuff. But this is what she's talking about when she says that this is a cultural form that foreshadows the suffering, power imbalances, social humiliation, and the social structure of harmony, showing the good life versus what we don't want. These people who are brought up to be publicly humiliated, we'll get to this, publicly humiliated. None of them are forced. That's an important detail. These people are showing us the life we don't want. At least it's not us. I'm not that bad. Right? This is a degradation ceremony. This is, again, it's ritualized humiliation. But again, as I said, these people agree to come on to this show, right? We'll get to it. This also is identity stripping, because we don't, even though Jerry usually started off with some kind of like small interview, like, oh, tell us a little bit about yourself. By the time the show is over with, usually everybody's missing their shirts, and we don't know anything about these people other than whatever the hell it was they came on this show to tell us, usually something awful, and that's it. So we have removed the identity of these individuals, much like they remove their shirts, and all they have left is whatever it was the topic of the show was. My baby daddy, it ran off with my sister's cousin, and now he has a 3-legged toad. And for whatever reason, we're going to fight about it. I'm making shit up. That's kind of the point. We don't remember that the guy who got dragged on this show, we don't remember that he also collects rare coins and, has found a rare twice minted nickel, whatever. We don't remember that detail, right? He saves puppies. We don't remember that detail. But that's the identity stripping part, right? Now, the audience becomes the moral collective, right? Because again, the audience is there to judge in real time. And the audience, much like with WWE, is participating, right? They are booing the bad guy. They are, to the people when they tell the sad story. If, I know I've seen it, like the usually it's the woman who's like, I'm not going to take your shit anymore. And the audience is like, yeah. It's the same kind of thing. And it's an encouraged reaction from the audience towards the people on the stage. And though Jerry usually sits there, Jerry or whoever, we're just focusing on Jerry, though Jerry usually is sitting there and he's like, come on, guys, come on. Shh. Let's be nice. Shh. He's not really controlling the audience, because Jerry has plants in the audience. If the audience isn't getting riled up enough, there's somebody in the audience to make sure they get riled up, right? You only need one guy. So anyway, going back to this creates the downward moral comparison. Going back to what Sherry Ortner was talking about. At least it's not me. I'm not that bad. You know, that kind of moral spectacle, right? We talk about this a lot when we talk about when we talk about dark anthropology, the whole safe consumption of various transgressions. When we watch the girls, right? When we watch Amber, now we watch Rosie, and a lot of us are watching Foodie do whatever the fuck Foodie's doing. You know, it's like, oh, it's not me. What is she doing? What the hell's wrong with her? Why? I would never do that. I'm so much smarter. I'm so much more clever. I can see the problem from here. Well, yeah, but I'm sitting at my computer. I'm not there. You know, I'm not living living the consequences of my life's decisions, right? So, there's that. All right. Now, the problem with the Jerry Springer show, and this is something that we will discuss when we get to Bus, is the whole concept of yep, we sure will. All right, so the problem with the Jerry Springer show is the whole concept of confession without forgiveness. So with the Jerry Springer show, this is just a blanket statement. I'm sure there were episodes where, you know, somebody came forward with a transgression against whoever, and by the end of the show, they were all like, oh, I forgive you. Oh, I forgive you too. And they hugged it out. I'm sure that probably happened. But in general, the concept was you bring two people up on the stage, they have beef, they continue to have beef, the audience antagonizes them into physically having beef. And by the end of the show, everybody's being dragged off the stage by the security people who themselves became characters by the end of Jerry's show, in the end of the run of Jerry's show. Because I saw memes. Anyway, memes were a thing before you were born, youngins. Anyway, the point is, Jerry's show created the concept of confessing without absolution. So people would come on, they'd tell their story, and the audience would judge without ever allowing the people to be forgiven for whatever the fuck it was they were talking about, right? I stole my sister's cereal. How dare! You know, whose cereal is that? There's never forgiveness for it. And that's one of the most dangerous things that the Jerry Springer show created. There we go. The wigs are being pulled. And this poor guy, I'm gonna leave. I'm just gonna go. No, you're not, buddy. No, you're not. You're stuck here now. This is purgatory. Anyway, but that wasn't an unusual end for the Jerry Springer show. Or middle. I don't know. Anyway, again, I don't have as much experience with the Jerry Springer show as I do with wrestling. They were not the same, which is why I'm doing this comparison. All right, but let us bring that back to... All right, all of that brings us back to specifically LoLCow Bus, but the LCU in general. We've talked about the ritualistic nature of the WWE. We've talked about Kayfabe, which we will be referring back to. We've talked about ritualistic humiliation of Jerry Springer and the concept of confession without forgiveness. And most importantly, the main character of all this, the audience. Keep all of that in mind. Right. So, LCU, LoLCow Bus, right? So, Jerry Springer was about the moral spectacle, right? Kayfabe conflict logic with WWE. Now, we're moving on to live stream platforms, which benefit from, or can, Keem has learned how to make his, benefit from basically combining the two. And however you want to define this, I don't care. You don't even have to like Keem. I'm going to give the man points because he has put together a somewhat successful model here of combining the spectacle of Jerry Springer and the soft scripting of WWE. And we will talk about that in the next video when we talk about the various characters, the literal characters, not just the audience, of the LCU. All right. I don't care if you like Keem. I don't think I do. But you have to acknowledge the somewhat successful format of the at least this the LoLCow Bus. All right. I haven't watched any of the other shows really, except to watch the integration of Amber into the LCU. So I've seen snips from other LCU shows as Amber was being brought into her own show, but that's it. This creates a system where the conflict is engineered, the reactions are real, and harm towards the hosts appears structural and not real. Kayfabe. So, this is the reframe. This is Kayfabe, the loose scripting. Because LoLCow is made up of dubious characters to begin with. All right, Amber, for example, who is well known within her own universe, the Amberverse, for being an unreliable narrator, right? When she's brought onto her own show inside the LCU, which has always been questioned as to whether or not the storylines within the LCU are real or not. And the LCU also has had other hosts on other channels whose validity and reliability as a narrator has been questioned. So you have a network of individuals who are all unreliable narrators, and you put them together on a show. I know nothing about Scooter or Sweet Tea's backgrounds or why the hell they're LoLCows, but apparently they are. But the problem is once you've defined someone as a LoLCow this hard, their reliability, their trustworthiness is, right? They just start off down here. So it's even harder for them to get up here as far as being reliable. So that's where Kayfabe starts to fall apart. Because I can't even suspend my belief long enough to believe the storylines that are occurring within the show are real. But I can see where Keem is trying to do that. All right? Now, I have already gone over this exact episode talking about how during the episode there were clearly staged interruptions that happened, talking about events within the known Amber lore. We talked about how Keem himself put in a cat meowing noise that was played almost every time someone in the audience brought up Rarity. We talked about how Keem himself would interrupt the stream to scold the hosts on their first episode. Amber's own behavior was questionable. Sweet Tea's behavior was questionable. Scooter's behavior, everyone's behavior was questionable. And then there was the participation of the audience itself. Again, a very important character. We know that Keem had sock accounts. We know this because Scooter told us. Good job. But we know that Keem has sock accounts that he will use on these other shows to inflate numbers, but also to kind of stir up the audience. He uses his sock accounts as plants, much like in the Jerry Springer. If the audience doesn't seem to be participating or participating in the way that Keem wants them to, Keem will use his sock accounts to go in and stir shit. He will send superchats that get read out by a text-to-speech bot, so that it stirs shit. And that's how Keem is very much like Jerry Springer, in that if Keem doesn't see enough interaction occurring between, or enough drama, if one will, between his hosts and the audience, he will go in and stir the pot. There also appears to be, very clearly, storylines occurring within the LCU. And two that seem to be very important, because I don't know if we can even trust Roxy anymore. Two that seem to be very important were a woman named Roxy, who used to be a host on the LCU. Roxy, before Amber even got on the LCU, Roxy went after Amber pretty hard. And again, I did a video about that, and it was very cathartic to watch. Don't get me wrong. I still feel good watching that video. However, it appears that Roxy has removed videos and apologized for that. So that makes Roxy unreliable to me. And there is also evidence that, or at least evidence to me, that Keem is trying to start a beef storyline between Amber and Boogie. And this is an important storyline, or it's important to us, because Amber is the new shiny LoLCow, right? Amber is the new most popular cow. Boogie is what we call a legacy cow, because Boogie is probably the most important cow. I hate to call them that, but that's what they call themselves on the LCU, right? The show that Boogie is on is probably the most popular show on the LCU. And it is that way because of Boogie. Like, love him or hate him, you don't have to agree with me. The numbers tell you what you hear. You don't have to agree with me. Just go look at the numbers. But this rivalry between the new face and the old face, or the new heel and the old heel, I don't know. I don't know how to classify these people. But that's a classic rivalry storyline that comes out of things like the WWE. Right? And it's clearly manufactured, in my opinion, because we can track Amber's support of Boogie in the past when she had her own channel. Amber was very strongly a supporter of Boogie, going out of her way to support Boogie. But now, all of a sudden, she's not even on the LCU for a full week, and suddenly, Boogie's wrong. Boogie's the devil. Amber wishes horrible things upon Boogie. Huh. Do I need to go get a sign? Should I be holding up a sign? Do I need to be going, boo? Boo! Is that what I'm supposed to be doing? Audience participation. Very important. I mean, for those of us who watch wrestling, we can clearly see what's happening. Right? So, that's the Kayfabe. Loose scripting reformed here. The problem, as I pointed out, is everyone in the LCU is unreliable, which brings everything into question. We can't even trust that certain very seemingly serious events are real or not. That's how unreliable this show is. Talking about the audience participation within the LCU. So, what that looks like. There is the live chat within the LCU, which is moderated somewhat and is usually limited to people who are members, not just subscribers. Those are referred to as the Greys. People are classified by the LCU as to how much money, effectively, they are giving any one show. At least on Bus, the hosts spend the majority of the time e-begging, hardcore e-begging for money. So that's what they do. One of the ways that they do control audience participation is by limiting the live chat to people who pay, members. So you have to pay a monthly fee to participate. The Greys are people who are subscribed but don't pay a monthly fee. And the grays are typically, even though you can type and chat, they don't see you, right? You can't see me. Anyway, you can, as a gray, give a super chat. And the super chats will be seen. However, super chats of a certain amount of money will be read out loud by a bot, because I believe they use a app called Streamlabs, which I need to learn how to use. But the text to speech, which will be called TTS, the text to speech TTS will read out super chats of a certain number, a certain amount or higher. Typically, it seems to be $20 or higher gets your super chat read out. And this can be both really annoying and also very poignant at times. This is the penultimate way that the audience can participate with the hosts, because since it's read out loud, it's very hard to ignore. Because the hosts don't have to look at the chat, and they can ignore the lesser super chats, even though they do pop up and they're brightly colored. They don't get read out, right? And the members, there's a lot of members, and their chat moves very quickly. So if you're not real good at reading at 1,000 words per minute or per second, really, you will have a hard time following the chat. And the super chats that get read out, it seems like a good idea. It really does seem like a good idea. It's really not. But they do get read out loud, and the audience, interestingly enough, when it comes to LoLCow Bus, have learned how to weaponize the TTS. Because I don't know if it's all of the hosts or if they're just pretending, but Amber has the attention span of a goldfish. And so does it seem the other two hosts do as well. So that's how the audience is able to participate. Now, the audience can participate with each other. And that's usually how the audience participates for the most part in things like WWE and also Jerry Springer. Though you do have a closer relationship with the actors and the hosts in things like WWE and Jerry Springer, because you're physically in the same room as them, so they can physically hear your voice, even though that is true. And that's not true here. You just have three individuals who are sitting in a room by themselves looking at a computer screen, much like I am doing. The TTS allows the audience to have a physical voice in the room with the hosts. And as I said, they do weaponize that. Amber's first show, this one, a lot of the super chats that were sent, that were read, had very unpleasant things to say. But also, one of the things that I noticed that the super chats would do is people would put emojis into the super chats, and the TTS would read out the name of the emoji. So the most infamous one was heart eyes cat head emoji, or just cat face emoji. And they put it in there like 20 times. So the TTS just kept reading cat face emoji for like 20 minutes. It was not funny. Anyway, whoever you are, I still don't like you. I cursed you then, I curse you now. That's really the only way the audience has a physical voice with the hosts. The hosts do sometimes pay attention to the chat, but they have the ability to just look away. And if you just look away, then you don't have to worry about it. It's out of sight, out of mind. One of the other things that go on within the chat, and we'll talk about this more when we talk about the characters, because chat is a character, is the sock accounts themselves. Because if Keemstar has socks that he is using to manipulate the chat, it stands to reason that he has other people who are also using sock accounts to keep the audience riled up. Because again, remember, chat isn't just talking to the hosts. Actually, for the most part, chat is talking to itself. So the umpteen million people that are in that chat, they are talking to each other, right? And you want to keep people talking to each other in chat because it's YouTube. YouTube has a whole different concept of what engagement looks like. And as long as you have people typing in chat, YouTube's like, oh yeah, this is good. Because in YouTube's head, people talking in chat means they're talking to the hosts, and therefore the hosts are getting engagement. I could not talk to my chat the entire time, and as long as they're talking to each other, YouTube thinks it's amazing. Whatever. YouTube's weird. So that's one of the reasons why the sock accounts are important here, because the sock accounts are keeping the chat talking to each other. And that looks like engagement. And it is engagement as far as YouTube's concerned. And that's what Keem wants to see, right? This is where the soft scripting comes in. You can't control the audience completely. You can manipulate the audience. You can manipulate the audience, but you can't control the audience completely. Especially when you have incredibly unreliable hosts that make it very hard to suspend belief. So Kayfabe doesn't really work. And troll accounts. And then you have trolls or buddy trolls. And I'm stealing buddy trolls from another user, I believe, is Aren't You Exhausted? But the concept of a buddy troll is someone who is trolling you, but they want you to think they want to manipulate you into thinking they're being your friend online. But so you have the trolls and you have your buddy trolls that are also in the chat, and they're also sending super chats, and they can act like they can do the same thing that Keem's trying to do with his sock accounts, only they're not sock accounts. They're actual just people who are in there just trying to stir shit. Now, what I was talking about all the way back when we were talking about Jerry Springer, the idea of they agreed to be here. This is an important concept that it's much like Kayfabe. This is an important concept for shows like Jerry Springer and also shows like LoLCow because they agreed to be here. It is a way for hosts like Jerry Springer and shows like Jerry Springer and also like Keemstar to be able to alleviate themselves of responsibility, right? When in fact, this is actually coercive participation, right? But if I can say, well, they agreed to be there, they're being compensated, then it somehow absolves me of having to be responsible for anything else that happens to the hosts once they're there. But that appearance of consent also allows the audience to have a moral high ground for when they attack the hosts, because let's face it, that's what's happening. So in Amber's case, Amber finally agrees, and she did, to be on LoLCow, right? And now she's on her show, right? Amber agreed to do this, right? She's getting paid, we think. Okay, so she deserves what happens to her, right? She should have known this was going to happen. It's LoLCow. She should know that Keem's going to treat her like this. It's LoLCow. It's the LCU. She should have seen this coming. Hear it? But that's consent laundering. That idea that... And Jerry Springer's guests, you would hear very similar language there as well. Well, they wanted to be on the show. Haven't you ever seen Jerry Springer? Why would you want to be on that show? Man. So that's consent laundering. The whole removal of responsibility and removal of ethics and morals effectively because they consented to be there. Very Running Man-ish, if you want. If you will. If you've seen the new Running Man. It's actually a really good show. A really good movie. You should go see it. But yeah, so trying to think if I got to all the terms. I think I got to everything I wanted to get to in this video. And it's already running longer than I wanted it to. So good job, me. Hopefully it won't be too bad because there's probably been a lot of pauses and a lot of cuts. But hopefully we got to everything that I wanted to get to. If you have questions, leave a timestamp with your question down below. It does help me remember what the hell I was talking about in that moment, especially if you have like a comment on something. It really helps me remember what I was saying in that moment. I have the brain of a goldfish, the memory of a goldfish. If you have made it this far in the video, go ahead and put a bus. Is there a bus? A little yellow car? Down in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think down below. Did you watch the first episode? What did you think? Do you also see the overlap of the WWE and the Jerry Springer hashtag on any of this? Am I completely in left field? It's possible. And there will be a test. Maybe, if I ever get around to it. So that's all I've really got for you guys. There will be a part 2. In part 2, we will be talking about the characters, which will include Scooter, and we're not going to do deep dives into their backgrounds. That's not what I'm talking about. But we will be talking about the characters that they are playing, the archetypes that they are representing of Scooter, Sweet Tea, Amber, Keem, Boogie, and the audience, and some other people. So stick around for that, and I'll see everybody in the next video. Bye!
This is my outro music. You can't copyright strike me because it's just me singing. This is my outro music. Thank you for watching. See you next time.